I'm here to give you some helpful information on how to grade capstone, especially for the new people. What I thought we would do today is just a brief overview. What is capstone? What it is as a whole. Go over the traits and skills real quick and some basic requirements. We'll look at the scope and sequence just so everyone's on the same page. We'll look at the rubric, and then we'll talk about how each section of the rubric is scored, and then I wanted to give you some examples. If we have time at the end, I thought we could watch one and score together, but honestly, I think more important than that is going through example PowerPoints and looking at what makes this a successful PowerPoint for the rubric. So I think that's what we're going to do. And then this is also an open discussion, so we can, when we get to that point, I'll pull up some students' PowerPoints, we'll look at it, and we can have a discussion about why is this effective or what could be done better. The other thing is these examples were prior to the new rubric, so we can also be a good opportunity to look at what could they do next time to make it match the new rubric. So that's the plan. So, crash course for capstone. It's a community or intrapersonal based project. What I mean by intrapersonal based project is doing something to grow your own personal information, world, life, that type of thing. Writing a novel, creating a music album, that type of thing. People hear capstone and assume it's community-based, but that's not necessarily the case. In fact, both our capstone winners for the past 2 years have not been community-based. They have been intrapersonal-based capstones. They must solve a problem and or challenge and grow the student's knowledge. When people hear that a capstone must solve a problem, they automatically hear, well, what if everything doesn't have a problem? Well, I would argue that everything does have a problem. Like our student that won this year, he wrote a full-length album. His problem was, how do I record music and make it sound good? How do I get my music out there to the world so that people can actually listen to it and I can make money off of it? So there are problems in any type of project. We like to call it a passion project because this is not something that necessarily has been dictated, you must do this. Students get to pick their topic and what they're doing. It should be a passion of theirs. And both students who won, I can tell you, were very passionate about their topics, and that's why they won. They must prove competency in all 7 traits and skills, which I'll go over right now. So on the left-hand side, we have traits, and on the right-hand side, we have skills. They are paired. So knowledge, reading, writing, communicating is paired with communication. Innovation is paired with solution seeking, so on and so forth. So those are the 7 traits and skills that they have to prove competency in order to pass capstone, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. How can students prove competency in all 7 of those areas in order to pass capstone? Knowledge is broken down into reading, writing, and communicating, and math, so English and math. One thing as a capstone advisor that I have found very helpful is talking about the icons with students. I think the icons sometimes help define the definition more than the definition. I don't know. I just think they help explain the definition better. There are some requirements for capstone. They have to have an essential question. They must write a project proposal. They have to complete a project plan. So here's my plan, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to accomplish for all 7 traits and skills. They must write a letter of request to their professional consultant, formerly called mentor. So that's a professional in the field that they are doing their capstone project around. They have to write a letter of request asking them to be their professional consultant. Then they must complete fieldwork. Fieldwork looks different for every student. So if it's a community-based project, the fieldwork is doing their community service. If it's an interpersonal-based project, it's writing their novel or writing their songs or whatever they're doing. They have a final product and or service depending on the project. So a student who's writing a novel, their final product is the novel. A student who is raising money for the Humane Society, their final service is all their volunteer hours or whatever they did to raise that money, those types of things. The service ones often come with products also because they have the brochure that they handed out or the flyer that they hung up around town or fill in the blank. And then all of them complete a final presentation, and that's when they get their final grade, and that's what we're here to learn today. The final presentation is to 3 people: their advisor, their professional consultant, and a third evaluator of their choice. So here's the scope and sequence, just especially for our new people, so you can kind of see how it works. Students do not have to follow this scope and sequence. They can move faster, and everything is available to them through the website. But in general, in 9th grade, they get introduced to Capstone, they learn the traits and skills, and they begin brainstorming. And that only happens 2nd semester of freshman year. They don't do anything first semester, really. In 10th grade, they write their project proposal. That's when they come up with their idea. They find their professional consultant, potentially, and they write their letter, and they write a project plan. 11th grade is all about field work. They complete their field work, and they begin working on the final presentation. And then in 12th grade, it's really should be just revising, editing, practicing their presentation, and then doing their final presentation. Students must score a 2.0 or higher to pass, and then if they want to qualify for the scholarship competition, they must score a 2.7 or higher. Here is the rubric, which I handed out to everyone. It forces you to make a copy. I'm really proud of that. Really proud of that. One day it'll open, maybe. Great. You all have a copy. Perfect. Okay. Oh, look. It's loading slowly. Okay, you guys can look at the rubric while I go over this stuff. So you'll notice the rubric is on a 3-point scale, developing, proficient, and advanced. Their scores are average. Like I said, they must receive a 2.0 to pass. However, there can be no scores of 1 anywhere on the rubric. So if they get a 1 in any box and their average is still higher than 2.0, they still do not pass Capstone. They cannot have a 1 in any box. The great news is that they do not have to redo the entire presentation. They only have to fix that 1 box, and they just have to prove to their advisor that they reached competency in that 1 area, and then they pass Capstone. The skills that are graded. So this is the important part for you guys. On your rubric, knowledge, communication, reading, writing, and math, this first box. Every single box of there is graded. The next section is the math section. You'll notice that there are 8 math principles. Students choose 3 out of the 8 that are graded. So you will not grade all 8. You will only grade the 3 that the student chose to present. If your student did a good job, they'll label their slideshow with whichever one they chose, and then you only grade those 3. After that, we get into the rest of the traits and skills: innovation, solution seeking, tenacity, reflection, so on and so forth. They get to choose 2 of those to present. And when I say 2, I don't mean innovation, skip solution seeking. If they pick innovation, they automatically pick solution seeking because they're like the same thing. So they have to pick 2 traits and 2 skills. So innovation and solution seeking, and then they could pick agency and empowerment or whatever. So they get to choose which 2 they present on. After that, the evaluation team, which is the team of 3 people, will ask them about a third, and that is their last one that's graded. So they have to be prepared for all of them, but they will only get graded on 3, 2 of their choice and 1 random one. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay, questions thus far? Okay, great. So here's what we're gonna do. I have 3 different PowerPoints from real students from last school year. We're going to look at one, and we're going to look at her English language arts. We're going to look at another one and look at his math, and then we're going to look at another one and look at their the other traits, the innovation, that stuff. And like I said, this part is like a discussion part. Let's talk about it. Let's say, what makes this effective? What makes this a 2 or a 3 on the rubric? How could they do this better? An important note when grading, before we get into this, is that we must remember that when we're grading capstone, we're grading the student's ability to reflect on their project. So let's say a student made a capstone goal to raise $2,000 for the Humane Society. Something happened, they only raised $500. Doesn't matter. They don't fail because they didn't raise $2,000, as long as they can reflect on what happened. Why didn't I raise $2,000? Why did I only raise $500? What could I do better next time so that I can meet my goal? Those types of things. So it's really that reflection piece, and as long as students are reflecting, then they have the ability to score well on these. Also, as I'm showing you the PowerPoints, obviously effective PowerPoints have minimal words, and then you're listening to the person. So when I'm showing you these PowerPoints, I might have to explain a little bit about what the student said to help you grasp like how they got graded, because their PowerPoint not be like, oh yeah, that's reading, you know what I mean? So, oh, I don't know what button I pressed. Okay. The folder that I shared with you has this in there, so you can follow along in here. I kind of broke down which pieces I thought were important to show you. So we're going to look at the English portion first. So on your rubric, it's this first box, knowledge, communication, reading, and writing. There's like 3 main boxes there. Evidence and artifacts, writing, application, and oral expression. So that's what we're looking at. I broke her slideshow down, told you what slides I thought made it look good, but we can look at those together. As an English teacher, this is what I determined was good about this. Real quick on this student, she did her capstone on helping firefighters with PTSD. So she surveyed the fire department to figure out how many firefighters could qualify for having PTSD. She brought that information to the firefighters, psychologists on site, and they started working a program to help their firefighters deal with PTSD. So that was her PowerPoint. So the first thing she did was she asked her essential question, how can I help local firefighters who are dealing with PTSD? She then went on to explain what she did, which is essentially her thesis statement, right? She answered her question. Here's what I did to help local firefighters with PTSD. So that's that English language arts portion. Next thing she did that was really good in English language arts is this is her hook, right? This is her get your audience engaged. So she presented us with a statistic and let it sink in a little bit. So something else good for English language arts. Then everything else is a bunch of background information so that we can effectively understand her project. My favorite part of her slideshow is pictures. She did an internship at the fire department. This is her at the fire department. She's like this tall. She's adorable. In her big old suit. She had tons of these pictures throughout her presentation. That is the evidence and artifacts box. If students don't have pictures, especially, or if they have pictures and they're just from Google, that doesn't count, right? So evidence and artifacts is like really what you're looking for, not just for English, but for all of it. Another thing that I loved about her project for English language arts is she was talking to us about PTSD, but she recognized that her audience might not understand PTSD, so she did a ton of research and went through it with us. She explained the brain and how it works, and she explained the hormones that cause PTSD, and she did a really excellent job of breaking down PTSD, which is a complex topic, and presenting it in a way that made us understand enough information in order to understand her project. So that's also some good English stuff. You'll notice too, if you've seen the template for Capstone, this is way deviated from the template because she added so much extra information, which was effective. Again, more pictures. That's her math. Anyway, another important piece of her English, she has a call to action, which, as we know, is a good conclusion to your essay or whatever you're doing. And then my personal favorite is her bibliography. She did extensive research, and this is all peer-reviewed academic articles that she got off of PCC's website. And she read all that, and then those brain slides, that's what she taught us in those brain slides. So that's really what I like about her English. Questions, comments? Because
for like the bibliography,
yep.
Is it MLA or APA that's required?
Good question. There's technically no requirement. It kind of depends on the advisor. I teach a capstone class and I have them do APA because that's more likely to be used in college besides English. But I don't think good question. Other questions, comments about English? You guys have watched presentations. What have you found that's effective? Anything?
I think their product, if their product, along with whatever they did, for instance, a brochure, like you said, or
Yep.
some other thing, is highly effective. That's a helpful thing. Website development, that's a really good.
It's a good example. So when we're grading English, we're not necessarily just grading the PowerPoint, although that's obviously an easy place to go. Especially as when I advise students who have products like that, brochures, print them out, give them to your judges so that they can look at them, and so that you can grade their English that way. Another thing she did was her voice and her eye contact were on point. Like another teacher who just came to watch, he wasn't grading. He was literally in tears by the end of her project because her presentation was just so moving and emotional, and it was a heavy topic. And so she did a really good job of presenting this heavy topic in a way that wasn't like super depressing, but also wasn't insensitive.
I'm guessing she practiced a lot.
She practiced a lot. A lot. Obviously, also the most important part is her reflection on the process. So she would say things like, I had a mentor at one point who bailed on me, and I could have written the nasty email that I wrote, but I didn't send it. Those types of things. So, and again, it's like those reflection pieces.
Madison, can we use this slideshow as an example?
Yes. Yes, so I put all the 3 slideshows I'm going to show you in the folder that I shared to you.
Got it.
Yes.
But it's not on the Capstone website at all, like for them.
No,
Okay.
I thought about it, but I thought I should maybe wait until I get a good one with the new format.
Okay. Yep.
But I thought teachers could maybe use these to like show, yeah,
Especially
the reference page, yeah.
The fact that they don't need to just use the same slideshow. Yep.
Yeah. Also, she did a really good job of changing the template. I think kids are sometimes afraid to change the template, which sometimes I'm like, don't change the template. But other times I'm like, it's okay to add 6 brain slides if that is going to be helpful for our understanding.
Not rearranging.
It's adding to. So it's just like by student, I guess. Okay, ready for math? Okay. So the math slideshow I chose to show you, so FYI, this student, actually, all 3 that I'm showing you were in the scholarship competition last year. This one that I'm going to show you is our winner from last year. He won first place. The reason I decided to show you this one is because his project is not your standard math-based project. I think grading math that is like easily to see as math is way easier. Like this student who did an engineering project and they have all these calculations, you're like, yep, 3. You know what I mean? But this student didn't have that type of project, but he did a good job of still incorporating math, so that's why I picked this one to show you. It's that more non-traditional approach. So again, on this slideshow, I kind of listed what made his math good, but we'll walk through it. Also, just look how pretty it is. It's so pretty.
He's an artist.
Yeah. He showed me that picture like that, and I was like, oh my God. This is awesome. Nothing to do with math, but just so you know, he had a video. So he wrote a full-length album, produced it, like had CDs, like actual CDs, the case, inserts in it. He signed them all. He created the art for the cover, the whole bit. So first he had a video of him playing music in like elementary school, and it's hilarious. It is gold. And so he played that at the beginning, and then he played another video of him last year playing music from his album later, and that was part of that reflection piece. And so I loved that he was willing to share the first video with us. So anyway, that was a side note. Okay, so his first math. So when you look at the math, there's 8, and remember they pick 3. He has his labeled. The first one he's going to talk about is looks for and makes use of structure, which is number 7. I probably should have told him to put number 7 on there, but it's okay. So what he did is, first of all, he has evidence and artifacts. He has a picture of his CD. What he talked about in his makes for and looks use of structure is the structure of his album and the structure of some of his songs. So he talked about how you want to start the album off really strong with lots of emotion to get people hooked, and then you want to mellow out, and then you want to have a climax song. Not quite the end, but like almost the end. You want to have a climax song and to get everyone back in. And then he talked about how to structure a song. You want to do this, and then you want to do this, those types of things. So start strong, end stronger. Less energy before the climax, those types of things. And then he took a picture of his, like this is his CD case with the order of the songs on his album. So he talked about that. So again, not your traditional approach to math, but does he identify patterns? Yes, he identified patterns in his music. Does he have a reason for why he structured them this way? Yes, those types of things. So that's his first math. Questions, comments? His second math, makes sense and perseveres through problems. I think that's number 1. Makes sense of problems to persevere in solving them. So what he noticed, so this one does have a graph. What he noticed was that when he first started producing music on YouTube, he wasn't getting any views. So this is his first graph. He's like, nobody was watching my stuff. So he reflected. He said, what could I do better? Well, how could I get my music more out there? And earlier in the slideshow, he talked about all the marketing that he did. So he did like 10 days of Instagram posts, and he researched other bands and how do they get their information out there. And so he showed us earlier in the slideshow how he did all that. And then you can see his graph grew later based on the things that he was doing by posting to Instagram and stuff. So he walked us through this. So here's the problem I identified no one was watching my stuff. So how can I solve that? I'm going to start posting to Instagram. Boom, my hits go up. Definitely did number 1, I think. Okay, great. This was my favorite. So uses appropriate tools strategically, which is number 5. The rubric says variety of tools, parentheses, calculator, spreadsheet, graph, etc. Etc. leaves it wide open, if you ask me. So what tools did he need to accomplish this? Well, he needed software and he needed hardware. So he didn't need a calculator. He needed a good microphone. He didn't need a graph. He needed Photoshop to do his thing. So he talked about the different software. This is a screenshot from his recording software that he uses. Later in his scholarship presentation, he had an image of himself with his fancy headphones on, and he talked about why these headphones were the best headphones to use for this particular thing. So this meets it because these are tools that helped him accomplish it, even though they're not necessarily math tools. What I had him do also was list all of the tools, because as the advisor or the evaluator, we can see that you use all of them, but I only had him talk about 2, one of each. I had him talk about a software and talk about a hardware, but we can see that he used multiple tools. Questions, comments, concerns? Does that help a little bit, seeing a non-traditional approach to math? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, like I had like one kid do like more of an engineering type thing, and he had like this slide of formulas, and I was like, great. You did math.
I'm glad you said that, though. I just texted
Yeah.
Put that in your tools
That's a
section.
tools. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tools are not just calculator, like not even a little bit. So, okay, great. Okay, so the remaining traits and skills, which are like the innovation, solution seeking, tenacity, reflection, blah, blah, blah. Students have to choose 2, and then they'll get asked about a third, so they have to be prepared for all of them. For this one, I picked a heavier traditional math one to show you how a math one can use some of these softer skills, if you will. These students, there's 2 girls, they coded a mathematics game and then brought it to Lincoln Elementary School to the 5th grade class and let the 5th graders use it. And then they got feedback from the 5th graders. They went back and made corrections to their game, added some stuff, and then went back and had them play again. So this was a very heavy math-based one because coding is very math-based. So I wanted to show you their other skills that they used. Also, when you're grading these skills, it's very easy to grade these almost before they even get to them, especially like tenacity. A lot of students will talk about problems that they encountered before they even get to their tenacity slide, and that's okay to use that information when you're grading. You don't have to use only what's on the slides. So the ones that they chose were innovation, solution seeking. So they wanted to create a product. They were inspired by COVID and having kids play games while they were not at school by still learning math. And so this is, again, evidence and artifacts, the most important thing in your project, having pictures, pictures, pictures. I can't say it enough. What they did is they actually drew out page by page what they wanted their math game to look like before they ever coded a single line of code. So this is what they wanted their front page to look like. They talked about finding problems and fixing them. So earlier in the math, they had talked about, so you can see the image there so they did like a crossword puzzle, and so it taught kids math and spelling. So when they 2 + 2 = 4, so then they had to type in FOUR into the crossword puzzle. And what they wanted to do was when the letter was correct, it would turn green, but it would turn green and then change the shape of the box. So they had to figure out how to fix that code. So that was something they talked about for innovation, solution seeking, right? It was a problem they had. They wanted to help ways to help the community, right? They're inspired by COVID. Also, to brag about these girls, neither one of them knew even what coding was when they started this project. They taught themselves how to code to make this math game, which that in itself is way impressive. And so also problems that they had to solve, right? How do I code? The next one that they chose to do is agency and empowerment. So again, they did not know how to code, and so they had the agency and they empowered themselves how to learn to code. They spent hours on Code Academy with their mentor, their professional consultant, learning how to code to do this. And they used resources and they created their own code. So they did not, it's very easy. It's very easy to Google code if you know what you're looking for and use that code, and they did not do that. They created their own code. So that's agency empowerment. I can't remember which one they were asked about, but do you want me to go through some of the others? I think agency empowerment is the hardest one, so I was glad they picked that one.
Do you want to maybe tell us how they would have fallen short to receive a 1, 2, or 3 on it?
Yeah, I definitely, yeah. I would say the biggest reason that two biggest reasons people earn a 1 on the rubric is 1, they do not reflect, And 2, they do not have evidence, artifacts, pictures to support what they've said. They'll do some generic statements, which you can even see some of these girls did. These girls did in some of these, like, we were flexible. Very generic statement that they think hits the rubric, right? So that's when you might, as the evaluator, start asking pointed questions. Well, how were you flexible? And sometimes they can answer that and they totally have a story that they could have put on their slide. They just didn't because whatever. And sometimes they're like, I can touch my toes, or whatever. And they don't have a good answer. And then that's like when you get a 1. As the evaluation team, it's okay to say, hey, I don't think you're going to pass math. Here, let me ask you some questions to see if you did math. A lot of times you can tell a student did tenacity, but they didn't explain it well. So you can start asking pointed questions to come up with the answer. Like, you can see it, and especially if you're advising the student, if you're the advisor and you've been with them the whole time, like, I know you did this. You just didn't tell everyone that you did this. So how can you tell us to do this? So you can ask those pointed questions. That's okay.
Can you still give them that passing grade?
Yes. Yes, as long as they have a sufficient answer, yes. I've had students where I'll ask them pointed questions because I'm just like begging them to pass and they can't give me an answer. And I'm like, well, I tried. Yeah.
I think another point to make, I mentioned this in the last class, but is that some kids think their presentation is their product. And
yeah.
They sometimes fall short without enough coaching to realize they need another product.
You need a product. You need a flyer, or you need a fill in the blank or whatever. Let's see. These girls, their game, they had an easy level, a medium level, and a hard level. When they went to the 5th grade class and had the 5th graders play, one of the biggest feedback from the 5th graders were, I wish there was more games. So they went home and added 3 more games, 1 for each level. That's some of that reflection piece, right? They gave the students a survey. So before they left, they had the 5th graders fill out a survey. So these girls had multiple products. They had their game, obviously there's their main product, but they also created a survey, which is a product that you can use to grade. So how did the students reflect throughout the process? So I learned that the 5th graders wanted more because I gave them a survey. So then they went back and fixed it. So there's things throughout the whole slideshow that can really give you answers if they've done a good job, right? If they've done stuff the whole time. So that's something also, like I said earlier, just because it's not necessarily on their agency slide doesn't necessarily mean they didn't do it. They might have mentioned a story earlier in the presentation, like that's totally agency. They just didn't have it on that slide. Hopefully as the advisor, their advisor's coaching them through those things and will help them fix that, but that's not always the case, and that's okay. Other questions?
Did they include a screenshot of their survey on there?
I don't know. I don't remember. They've got a screenshot of their code. They got a screenshot of, that's the other thing, if students are doing anything computer-based, take screenshots even when it's not perfect, especially when it's not perfect, because that shows growth. So this part, when they had their code messed up, I was like, take a screenshot. And then they fixed it. They were able to fix it in the final version. Oh, I think they had links so that they could open it, which I wouldn't tell them to do a link like that, but it's okay. They had pictures of the 5th graders playing the game. That's also evidence. They had pictures of them at the school when they did it. So, yeah. Good. Other questions?
So if students fail their capstone, that usually the grading happens at the end of the year, their senior year, correct?
So they have to present by end of first semester senior year. And the reason for that is so that they have second semester to remediate if necessary. The scholarship presentation happened in, was it February, I think, this year? So happened after first semester.
So if they don't meet the criteria to get into the scholarship, can they redo it in order to the scholarship or no?
Yes, so if a student scores a 2.5 and they need the 2.7 to get in the scholarship, they can do stuff as long as the advisor's willing to get their score up. Same thing with if they get a 1 in any box. Remember, if they get a 1 in whatever, one math thing, they fix their slide, they come to their advisor, say, hey, I did this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great, now it's a 2, you pass, move on with your life. They don't have to represent. Yeah, good questions. Other good questions.
Yes, and Michelle was
Yes, ma'am.
telling me that somehow attending advisory meetings is part of integrity and communication, and it's somewhere in here, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's required. Maybe something as an advisor, like I did, bring up and say, hey, can you talk about integrity, how you used integrity?
Yeah, so I had a situation like that last school year where a student never, maybe it was the year before. Anyway, I had a student never show up to an advisory meeting, and so I marked her as a 1 on integrity. She was lucky that she also got a 1 in a math, and so I told her, if you show up 3 times after school so I can help you fix your math, I'll change your integrity too. And so it's also interesting. So you guys will need to know this as the advisor. I knew that she wasn't coming to advisory meetings, but her mentor and the third evaluator didn't know that, so they scored her as a 2. You as the advisor have the say to say, nope, she gets a 1. I don't care what you saw. You have that power. Or on the flip side, their professional consultant doesn't know how to grade because they're not a teacher, and they give the student a 2, and you're like, that's a 3. You can change that also. So you have that power. Yeah, so the rubric for integrity, anticipates how decisions impact others. You don't show up to advisory, that impacts me because now I'm staying after school extra to help you fix it because you couldn't show up the day it was, and that's okay to mark them as a 1. In fact, sometimes I think they need that.
But it took me having the ability to ask them that about the third trait.
Yeah,
and you're going to talk about.
So that's what I did too, because of course that's not the trait she picked to talk about. And as the advisor, I knew that that's why. So I asked her about integrity, and that might be rude, but I was like, so can you tell me how you did integrity?
It's not rude to have them do some learning.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's okay to do that. Also, on the flip side, you have a really great student who did a really great job the whole way through. You can throw them a softball. I know that your whatever was great. I'm going to ask you about that. That's okay, too. So, yeah, all good questions.
What about their portfolio? Where do you, grade-wise?
Good question. I'm a little bit different since I run a capstone class, but as the advisor, they should not even be signed up to present unless their portfolio is done. So if it's whatever the last day to present is, December 18th or 17th or whatever it is, and their portfolio is not done, sucks. They don't get to present. And that's how you grade that. So the checklist is online, yeah.
When, if you did it right before they present, like that day of, or if you want to check it before they ever.
I do not put them on the calendar until I have proof that their portfolio is, and that's just how I do it though. I don't care. So I don't know. I don't care how you guys do it, but I'm like, if you want on this calendar to present, you better get your portfolio done. So the portfolio doesn't necessarily go into the grade per se. However, you can use stuff from the portfolio to help grade, especially things like English. If their English maybe isn't so great on their PowerPoint, what grade did they get on their pre-search paper? Oh, well, they got an 85 on their pre-search paper. Okay, I could give them a 2, that type of thing. That's really when the portfolio comes into use. I haven't had that too often to look at there. Also, I'm with my kids every day. I'm a little different, but that's really the only time the portfolio might be used for their grade, if that answers your question. You're welcome. Anything else?